All right. So today we speak with Arianna James. She is the CEO of Ari Ventures Unlimited. Ari's focus is on project management and consulting to help brands expand and build better practices for maximum growth in cannabis, alcohol, and non-alcoholic beverages, to name a few industries. Ari's an experience extraordinaire and a delightful human to connect with. So welcome to the Activate Your Audience podcast, Ari.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be on.
It is our pleasure. So as always, we'll dive right into it. You mentioned earlier that your superpower is intuition. Give us a little bit of background on why that is your superpower. What is some of like the evidence that kind of brought that as your superpower?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say intuition is my superpower because I have the ability to walk into a room, an environment, a group of people, and assess everything from small details to the large ones. So I don't overlook anything, but I like to, pat myself on the back and say I have a really, like I said, it's like intuition of reading people. I can see when social cues are off. I can foresee maybe some staging issues that could arise based off of the communication channels leading up to. So I try and stay proactive on a lot of those channels to prevent anything from happening. But also that goes into having those personal relationships with the people that you work with. You know when they're dehydrated. You know when they're a little down. You know when that personality that they have just isn't shining through, so you can tap in with them and figure out what's going on. And so just through all of those self-help and self-development and also social development skills, I've learned to really rely on that intuition, and it hasn't steered me wrong.
I love that. Yeah, especially within, events and experiences, like that attention to detail, both from an execution side is important, right? Which comes with some experience, but also if you're naturally like gifted like that awareness, or like you said, self-developing the practices of that. What was that? Do you think you're like naturally like that as a person, or did you have a sort of experience that made you want to dig more into like, nurturing that kind of intuition?
I'm not naturally like that as an individual, from having a background in the entertainment industry as a model and knowing, nonverbal communication speaks louder sometimes. So always being aware of those things. But even in my day-to-day life, if you get to know me, even as a friend, you'll know that I'm more of the quiet person. I'm not the wild and woo. I'm the person who's like sitting back and assessing everything, but still having a good time. The girl who's pretty chill, So I find that it's just naturally something that I have.
Yeah. And I think so we worked on a project in Vegas for Dell Convention, right? So it was kind of a corporate setting. And that was the first thing that I noticed, right? Like you were very engaging, very much a part of this experience, a very important part of this experience. But then when you and I connected one-on-one, it was like you shone through as far as like that sort of like energy, which in Vegas, it's very common, right? Entertainment, the showmanship, but there is something to the authenticity that is definitely something that shines through from you. So I could totally see that. How do you mentioned earlier, like picking up on cues for, say, pepping maybe your teammates up or the project, or obviously within experiential and brand activation, a lot of it comes down to energy, right? And engaging and being delightful. What are some maybe like best practices in the field, or that maybe you yourself appreciate when there's an intention to it, or things you pay attention to that help kind of boost that morale, boost that energy, and, long festival hours, etc.?
Because, with being in this industry and in events, things change at the drop of a dime, or you have extended hours when you thought it was going to be a short day. Maybe more product came in and they're like cranking stuff out. And now it went from a 3-hour activation to a few hours longer than that. And so personally, I had an experience where I did an activation and it was a 2-week long activation, multi-city. I took the same staff from city to city. There was no breaks in between. And what I kind of learned is that just being genuine with your intention says a lot. And if it's a simple, hey, how are you today? Rather than going straight into the work day and like, this is what we got to do. I want you here. I need you managing this. Let me know if there's a problem. And then going and checking out into your other manager duties or production duties. I mean, when you're on site, there's staff management, there's client management, there's equipment management. So your lead or the person that you put in charge as that lead needs to be able to have all those social cues. And I find that just making sure people don't forget the basic fundamentals of being a human is just to check in and say, hey, how are you doing? Because then that will lead into, I'm having a hard day. I'm feeling a little dehydrated. I didn't eat too well this morning, or I didn't eat last night and I'm starving. Then I can say, okay, let me call some Santiago's burritos or something like into the activation, so that it's like you have food, water, what else? Or maybe they just need to take like a timeout. Hey, I need a 15-minute people break, because you are engaging. Your social meter is on full throttle the whole time. So people can get burnt out that way too. So I just try and make sure everybody is copacetic on all grounds.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes total sense. We forget a lot of times the human element, just because, as you mentioned, the pace, how things, are sometimes high pressure. And yeah, it's a very, unfortunately, sometimes a low bar, right? Like, just to be human and just to be like caring and nice and curious about how the people that you're working with, your teams who are essential to a project, are feeling. It's very much, in a world, especially Vegas, especially the industry as far as, projects and in the events world and festivals, there's a lot of that, shit's got to get done. So let's push it, very masculine energy. And so when you bring that sort of like feminine nurturing, definitely, it's sometimes like this secret weapon. But back to like what you're saying, it has to also be authentic, right? Like, it can't just be this manipulative thing. On that vein, like
the difference though, you can tell the difference between the manipulative like niceness and then it's just who that person is.
Yeah. And then Vegas, did you grow up in Las Vegas?
No, I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. So very much so a different city. When I left Denver 5 years ago, it was growing. It just got the cannabis buzz going through, and it was, in that pioneer stage of growing a city. And nothing like Vegas though. Vegas is a small town, I would say, with big city vibes. Everybody knows everybody here compared to Colorado. There's people I meet who live here in Vegas and they're like, oh, I've lived in Colorado like high school. And I'm like, oh, where'd you live? And so yeah, originally from Denver.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes you shine, I think, a little bit better in a city like Vegas, being an outsider, quote unquote, just because of that, right? Like, I'm in Texas. Southern hospitality is a very real thing, but I grew up in Vegas. So friends that I had come through from Texas, different clients, different colleagues that had like this sort of, Southern vibe, small city vibe. And the reason I think most people in Vegas know each other specifically within the industry is because, yes, size and population, it's like it's a small city, in terms of geography, but there's a good amount of people. But also within the containers of, experiential, entertainment, nightlife, like there is just those few that like stay within that circle, right? So it makes it a small kind of...
Hospitality. So hospitality translates in so many different languages.
100%. And shifting gears to, since you mentioned it with cannabis, is there any kind of, speaking to some of even the brand activation aspects or even the people approach, is there any best practices when it comes to, say, activating for a cannabis brand or any like regulated industry that is different from, say, working with other brands? Feel free to speak to it on like either the project management side, the consulting side, or the brand activation side, or all the above.
That's a really good topic to hit on, because if you're a corporate company, we use Dell already, for example. They can say, I want to do this, 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 and this. And there's not a lot of lanes that we have to stick in, as long as we're not, doing anything quite illegal or transporting anything illegal, or we're pretty open to what we can do. And with the sponsors that you can get, you're pretty open. Each state is different when it comes to the regulation of cannabis. And I can speak for the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada is one of the most highly regulated states when it comes to cannabis cultivation, production, the selling and distribution of it all. And now when it comes to the events and the consumption lounges that just got approved to open up this year as well. So when you're wanting to have an event for a cannabis brand, you just really want to make sure that you're falling in line with that state's regulations, and that the brands that you're representing are also falling in line with those regulations. So if it's hiring a company, one, for example, here in Las Vegas is Connect Hospitality. They run tons of cannabis events. They do with corporate clients. When I say corporate, I mean publicly traded cannabis companies like Curaleaf or Planet 13, but then they do the ones that are private as well. So what Connect's main function is making sure that your licenses aren't going to be in jeopardy, venue's license isn't going to be in jeopardy, and that we're not breaking any laws so that we can continue building the cannabis industry and having fun things like this happen. So it's highly regulated, but if you do have small companies like that, or if you need a resource for any of those type of events or making sure that you are compliant, feel free to reach out to me and I can definitely share more light on that.
Yeah, with things like that, I mean, how does it affect the consumer experience, right? Because if you're working with, is it just direct to consumers? Is there a B2B aspect on that side? How does that parse out into like those actual connections or activating those sort of audiences?
So a lot of the time, a lot of those events are going to be on like a private location, or in Nevada, there's Indian reservations. So there is a dispensary on the reservation, which is completely owned and regulated by that tribe. So they have different sets of rules and regulations. But speaking about non-Indian regulations and stuff like that, you just want to make sure that the customer experience, they don't see any of the background that you're going through. There are lots of hoops. There's lots of turns and things that you have to get to until the exact event date. But the main thing is wanting your customer or your guests to be able to walk in seamlessly, maybe a little bit of a line so they can kind of build that expectation, that mystery of like, oh my gosh, I'm waiting in this line. Like, what am I walking into? But then, you want to make sure that your brands are able to, give free products, do giveaways, make sure that they can collect data. They can make sure that they follow up, send coupons to these people, send them to next events that they're going to be to. So the experiential marketing portion that you can add to these cannabis events is really cool from brand to consumer, because they can do so many things within their own space to collect that data, to interact with that customer, and then give that customer their product for free, because we don't want to sell. I mean, it's a free event or free experience. We don't want anybody to have to take out their cash and now we're dealing with money and all of that stuff. Now, obviously, if you want to cultivate an environment like that, that's something else that you can talk about, but primarily not in the cannabis sector in the state of Nevada. Now, at Outside Lands, that was a completely different story. And that festival has a whole area called Grasslands. That is something that everybody should experience. And more states and more people like you and I, creatives in this industry, should be able to put on events like that, and cannabis brands can sell their product and it be in a safe space, 21 and up, no alcohol, like those type of regulations.
Okay. Nice. And going back to kind of what you mentioned earlier, what, if any, are there some top line metrics, or is there anything that you track as far as, measuring success for some of these activations or experiences?
I always find that with these experiences, we go over capacity. So we have to put a hold on the line, wait till people come out. So that lets me know that the projected market is bigger than what we're marketing to. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And maybe, so it sounds like it's also, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there a sort of sales funnel with it? It's specifically where there's gifting or sampling. Is there a sort of capture that you've seen? Or, if I'm wrong, let me know of data for follow-ups, or is it just more brand awareness for most of it?
There's lots of sponsorship opportunities. So these brands are sponsoring an event company or agency to put together monthly events, bi-monthly events for them, which gives them brand recognition. It gives them consistency throughout the community. And they're also doing lots of community impact events. So not just in the fun, let's go have a great time areas, but also in the communities that need. You see a lot of these, speaking in the cannabis world, a lot of these brands here in Nevada also do that community impact. So it evens out, it balances.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Is there a specific sort of initiative or community impact that you've seen? Because that's a huge, I think, proposition specifically within something like cannabis. What are some examples of some of those community impact projects, or is it charity projects, or like community as far as neighborhood programs? What does that look like?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So there's an organization out here in Nevada called the Chamber of Cannabis, which is a nonprofit organization that is helping shape the way the industry is forming here in Nevada when it comes to DUI reformation, when it comes to allowing ex-felons in the workplace and allowing them a second chance, social equity, giving ex-felons a chance to get into the cannabis industry and get a license to then take their illegal market to the legal market and build that legal legacy for themselves. So there's those like political and social initiatives that they're doing on the legislative front. But as far as like community and neighborhood impact, they do monthly, or like, I don't want to call it a monthly fundraising, or where we'll have a food truck go out. We've already put together little donation packs, like whether it's toothpaste, toothbrushes, pair of socks, like just the necessities, the basic necessities. And I know the last one that I was able to attend, because I was on the road so much this past summer, but the last one I was able to attend, you had about 3 or 4 cannabis brands who, you know, donated their time, their members as volunteers to go out there and hand out these supplies to a low-income family, you know, where it was diapers, formula. They had the free food truck for 3 to 4 hours while we're there. We had live music. We had, you know, just giveaways and fun things where the kids were there. So it wasn't like everybody smoking or there's a bunch of cannabis. It was actually for the community. I mean, we're giving back and seeing what people need and how we can, you know, reverse the money that the community puts out into the cannabis, into this medicinal plant, back into them.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I mean, shout out to New York City. Like they just gave their first, I believe it was like 100 licenses for recreational to people previously incarcerated on cannabis offenses. So actually one of the first guests of our podcast, a good friend and mentor, Cos Marte, they have Con Bud out in New York. They're hiring right now. If you know anybody in New York, anybody listening that, you know, is looking for work, especially previously incarcerated individuals, returning citizens in New York City. And yeah, especially in a city like Vegas, things like, you see it, any business that wants to have the trust of the community, specifically in an industry like this, is well suited to just have some sort of participation in community. But especially, as you mentioned, something like, you know, the whole Sin City / what is Vegas from, like, say, the party perspective, but also like the pure side of, you know, what is, as you mentioned, plant medicine and another way of economic upward trajectory, right? Like, why wouldn't that sort of mixing of both positive impact and obviously capitalism make sense specifically in a city like Vegas? So I love that. What would you say, maybe some tricks, kind of shifting back to you personally and you know, your work as an entrepreneur, as specifically you mentioned travel. Are there any tricks and tips that you swear by to kind of activate yourselves? So any like self-care, motivation, even like us ourselves out in the field, like it gets crazy long, right? It gets a bit intense. How do you keep focused? How do you even switch into high gear when sometimes, you know, the situation requires to really kind of go that extra level? Any best practices for that?
Breathe. First and foremost, breathe. I'm a person where I can get tunnel vision. Like, I will be the first one to admit I get tunnel vision, especially on site. And, you know, if something's not right, I just go into problem solving mode. And sometimes problem solving mode to somebody who's maybe not in problem solving mode can be a little bit like, right? And you don't want to freak them out with that energy you have. So you just kind of want to breathe, even though you might be freaking out inside, or you might be having, I always compare that SpongeBob scene where all the files are being burned in his head and he's looking for one, and all of the mini SpongeBobs are going crazy in his brain. So you may feel like that, but on the outside, as long as you can breathe and keep a cool composure, that's number one. Number two, don't forget that you are there to bring an experience, to be the experience. So no matter what you're going through in your personal life, and I know it's easier said than done, just leave that in the hotel room, leave that in your bed for you to deal with later. You should have the support of your team, knowing that you're in good hands and know that you're going to be okay. So with that being said, going back to self, know when to speak up, know when to speak up if you need a moment, know when to speak up if you are having issue communicating with somebody, if you're having an issue with the equipment. Rather than making 1,000 mistakes, I'd rather you make 2 mistakes and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you take over? I need a second. Personally, I work out all the time. I love to work out. I do yoga, I do Pilates, sometimes go in the gym, but primarily yoga and Pilates keeps me copacetic. I do it early in the morning. Sometimes I do 2 classes before 12 and I feel great. I feel super productive. And this is not on event day. So this is like in my everyday life. I'm waking up early in the morning, going and getting my workout in, coming home, checking my emails, making breakfast, and just making a routine sets yourself up for success. Making sure your house is clean, making sure you make your bed first thing when you wake up. Like those little things to start your day off set the tone for your day. Those are those for me personally. And then on site, because I have to be the ball of energy. Normally I'm, the manager, I'm the lead. I want to make sure that we're getting coffee. We have smoothies in the morning, whether it's fresh fruit. I make sure that everybody's taken care of on all fronts. So the only reason for there to be any type of discomfort is that maybe you've been holding your bathroom break for too long, and that's it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, especially the breathing part. It's so easy to forget if you're not conscious of these things. And then on the zoomed out macro level, all of these habits, all of these intentions do kind of help you be present, right? Be aware, which is, again, kind of maybe counterintuitive in the moment of action, to remember that we need your full you there. And as crazy as things can get, that breath is magical, right? We all have the ability to find it. So I love that. Thank you so much for that reminder. I'm going to run it back and just kind of highlight some of those things and then fill in anything that I may have missed. So I'll start at the end again, just kind of remembering to start where you're at, right? So leave anything that is maybe some baggage, any sort of energy where it belongs. So healthy compartmentalization, I heard, is maybe a good way, as well as the balance to that is communicating, right? So speaking up and making sure that we are making ourselves be heard, we are hearing others, and dealing with that human element. The breath, obviously we're humans, we need to have oxygen in our body. What a great reminder, to just remember that, to ground. And then kind of jumping to more of the people side of it. So practicing adaptability, everything changes within our industry. So being malleable, being adaptable, but also, again, these are kind of seemingly contradicting things, but also they're not, to have the empathy, right? Within, say, other people's maybe lack of adaptability or just circumstances, having this sort of human approach, I think is a great call out for that. And then where we started, I think, is just the attention to detail, whether it comes naturally to you or, I think you and I are both the growth mindset individuals that even if you're not naturally attentive to detail, we can all learn how to develop the ability to just pay attention to these cues, to learn more how to lead, how to be led, how to be even self-led sometimes requires a sort of attention to detail. What else? Anything I missed? Anything else you want to highlight as far as our conversation so far?
No, I think just not forgetting about you also throughout that process, not forgetting about you. Don't get overwhelmed. Just deal with the now. And that speaks volumes. That's my highlight, I would say.
Yeah, it's so true. Thank you so much. So is there anything that you want to plug in? Where can people find out more about you, or any specific projects you are working on right now that you want to call out?
Right now, I am currently free agent, which that's been a while in the making for me to say that. So it's weird, but I just finished my summer tour. So I'm open to taking on some new clients in that project management experiential world. You can find me on Instagram personally. It's Arianna James, Arianna Jinea. And Ari Ventures is currently going through a remodel on our website, but Ari Ventures Unlimited is my company's Instagram, which, like I said, we're going through a rebranding right now. So that website should be up within the next month. I'm really looking forward to it. Doing a little rebranding on that. But, I'm kind of just enjoying this moment of not having to jump on a plane at 5 a.m., right? It took me, I'd say this morning was the first day that I woke up and was like, no, you don't have to wake up like that. You didn't miss a flight. You're fine. Because normally, for the whole summer, for the whole 3 months, 4 months of the summer, I've been gone. I haven't been in Vegas at all. I think collectively, maybe a week. Yeah. Just in and out, back, all over the place. So it's amazing. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But I am enjoying this little period of rebranding, reorganization, and finding some new fun clients to work with.
Love that. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, anybody that has the pleasure to work with you is definitely on the winning end of it. So yeah, couldn't say more great things about you. I'm sure there's more great things to come with us. Hopefully we'll be partnering soon. But yeah, until next time, thank you so much for the chat, Ari.
Thank you.